Awesome. So I'm Mark Lewis. Most recently, I've been the CMO of Tres Agaves, which is a tequila and margarita mix brand. I'm originally from the UK, but moved to the US 25 years ago. And my background is really in brand strategy and communication strategy. I spent a very long time working for a lot of different ad agencies in New York and San Francisco, helping brands kind of define their brand strategy and their approach to the market, working with creative teams to understand their audience, to understand the audience and develop springboards into the right way to communicate with them to create more effective communication. Took a segue then into digital product leadership and led a product innovation team at Slalom Consulting. And then kind of went into the client side world at a data and analytics consultancy called Clarity Insights. And then after a brief trip back to the agency world, led the team here at Tres Agaves.
Incredible. So I do have a plethora of questions I want to ask you about branding, but I do want to start with your transition from the UK to the United States.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make you disclose what your age is, but you said you moved here 25 years ago or so. So I'd love to hear like why you inevitably came to the United States and what your journey's been like since you got here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was actually, I came to the States for very personal reasons. So it's a funny thing. So I'm British, but I'm also American because my mother's originally from New York. So I was used to coming to the States as a kid to see my family, every couple of years. So, and I grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons, admittedly not all the time, but, a lot of the shows and people of my age know, I also know. And it happened that my first job out of college was working for Chase as a foreign exchange trader, so nothing to do with marketing.
Interesting.
And they sent me to New York for training, and I met someone. And then, so we were doing a long distance relationship, and she tried to move to the UK, but immigration wouldn't let her. I wasn't liking my job. So we decided I would move to the States, and I wanted to change careers back into marketing. And so the best thing to do was to go back to school to do that. So I came actually in 95, having worked a couple of years out of college, to go to NYU to get my MBA.
Yeah. So what was the initial driver into banking, out of curiosity?
I was really fascinated by economics, and I got my undergraduate degree in economics. And it was kind of a challenge when I graduated because, there weren't as many economics consultancies back then as there are now, maybe.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go into the civil service because my father had been kind of he'd worked for the European Union, and I just didn't feel that was the right thing for me. So, but I wanted to use my degree. So I, kind of almost fell into banking, just frankly needing a job after college. And I just
Fair enough.
The thing is that when you're a trader, you are not, it's very much about the rhythm of the market, especially a currency trader. Mm-hmm. You're not thinking about long-term sort of macroeconomic things, the direction of interest rate, direction of unemployment. You're more worried about the, hourly or daily bounces up and down of the currency. And those are caused by supply, demand, sentiment, news, market craziness. So it just wasn't very strategic in that sense. So I really kind of, that's what kind of initially attracted me to it, but then at the same time it pushed me away from it.
Yeah. So then what drove you into marketing then? And by the way, the trading that you're doing, a lot of that's probably just done by algorithms now.
Well, there is a lot of algorithm trading. There definitely is. I think it's easier. There's a lot of kind of things that pick up that sentiment and movement. I still think there's probably room for people trading. But yeah, I'm sure there is algorithm.
I think so too. Yeah.
But why marketing? It's really funny. I always, my mother actually, funnily enough, was a journalist and an editor, and she worked with a really big name in marketing, a guy called Andrew Ehrenberg, who is kind of the founder of the things like the double jeopardy rule, and a lot of if you've ever read Byron Sharp's work on how brands grow, that's based on Ehrenberg's work. So it was very funny that I had this weird relationship with him, and I used to read his papers and stuff, and I loved ads. I really kind of thought when I was going like, oh, it'd be a cool job to make up ads. So I took a marketing course in college. I really liked it. Actually, while I was in college, I really wanted to be in the music business. And I really wanted to be a musician. So I always, when I moved to New York, I thought, oh, I'd like to be in music marketing because it's cool, it's music, and it's marketing, it's creative. And I sort of found out that the music industry, and I did a couple of internships at like RCA, Polygram. And I was like, yeah, it's not that interesting, and it's not, and the people who run it are kind of not really doing marketing in the way that I think you should be doing marketing. So I kind of pivoted away from that. But the desire to be in a creative marketing kind of role kind of was innate. And it was that outlet to something creative, I think, that I was really looking for.
Yeah. And knowing the context on that, how would you define marketing? I don't know how I would define it. So this might be a tough question, but I'd love to hear your response to it.
Yeah, I mean, marketing is the way that you create a product and bring it to market in such a way that it drives, I would say, consumer success that leads to business success, right? And I think that's a really important definition because I think a lot of people now, especially in the tech world, have disassociated product from marketing. But in the classic kind of CPG world, right? Sure, you might have food scientists or other scientists who invent a product, but you need a marketer to kind of understand who is this product for? What is this technology for? What should we do with it? How do we position it? Like, what benefits are there? How do we shape the experience? Because we need to understand who the audience is, who the consumer is at its core. So it's about, getting, in a way you could look at it as business driven by consumer centricity, right? Because you do have to put the consumer at the center of what you're doing. That
100%.
doesn't mean to say you need to parrot what the consumer says or does. You have to lead the consumer, right? There is some, like there's the famous Henry Ford saying, if I'd asked the consumer what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
It's about understanding the unmet needs of the consumer and figuring out how to satisfy those and bring it to market in a compelling way.
And in general, throughout your career, what are some ways that you've done that to A, lead the consumer, but B, just understand in general what they need and then shape the product around it?
Yeah, no, I think that, it's unfortunately not that often that I've been involved. I mean, I've done a fair bit of innovation work, whether that is new flavors for a brand of salad dressing, or new innovations for Brita, or creating a .com startup like ecomplaints.com, which I worked on. So, but I think fundamentally it's about listening to the consumer or watching the consumer at several levels. One is, I think, just watching, kind of everyday behavior. And you yourself are a consumer. So I think looking at your behavior or looking at your frustrations is kind of a big place to start. If you ever find yourself saying, I wish there was a way to do this, then that's a gap or tension. So looking for those gaps or tensions or problems, or looking where people are having to do workarounds, is a very important way to do that. And so you can observe it in everyday life, right? You can observe it, like if someone's buying two products to do one thing, immediately there's an opportunity, right? So I think the other thing is like, from a market research perspective, looking at, observing consumers using more ethnographic types of research. So borrowing from the techniques used by anthropologists where, you're observing people rather than asking them, right? I think also looking at trends, looking at changes in attitude and behaviors over time, changes in norms, I think is incredibly important. New rituals is another kind of interesting thing. that you sort of see people kind of, when you see people doing certain things, I think that's kind of another important piece of observation. And then, finally you get into just literally asking people, um, you know,
Right.
uh, but people are not necessarily very good at framing what they need. It's sometimes very hard for them to action the subconscious in that way.
Right. And you just have to start to pull it out of them and make assumptions based off of what they're saying. This is what they actually need.
Yeah, well, you need to figure out what the assumptions are, and you need
Mm-hmm.
to, go and test those assumptions, because you should never make the assumption.
Right.
You've just been like testing them. But like,
Right.
like if you go to look at Eric Ries and the lean product, the lean strategy, lean
Yep.
startup,
Yep.
mind,
Yep.
like,
That's right where my mind went. That's right where my mind went.
Start with two things. You start with the customer hypothesis and the customer problem hypothesis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is the person and what's the problem? And you kind of try and test different hypotheses about what those are. And then you have a problem, and then you start looking for a solution. And you don't come up with a solution until then. I remember I led a lean startup kind of methodology ideation session for some innovation work I was doing for a large retailer. And it was quite amazing the number of hypotheses that they were absolutely sure about that were actually incorrect. So it's very telling and it's a very good idea to always test your hypotheses.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've kind of talked our way into a conversation of the product life cycle, if you will, for marketing. So we talked through like doing your research on the customer, what they want, what they might need, what the product should be. And then obviously you have to go through, if you're a CPG company, you're going to have to actually create the product. If you're a software company, you have to create the software, what have you. Now you get to a point where you need to figure out how to communicate this. And I think this is where you have spent the majority of your career. If I'm not wrong, you've done a lot of communications and branding work. So at this stage in the process, what are you thinking through? Like you have the product, or you have assumptions around what you think people want.
Right.
How do you communicate it? How do you build awareness around something without it having been known before?
Well, I think that in the best times, it's so in sync with the product itself, like the reason for the product, that you need to, it just should come out of that. And that's where you need to, so there's a couple of different techniques, right? Ultimately, you are at the point of storytelling, right? So there's a couple of different ways that you can do it, right? So, but ultimately what you want to do, and what you should have done when you're creating the product, is identify an audience, understand the unspoken, unmet need that will appear to them, that is there for them, or identify a tension which the product or brand can resolve. Okay, and the key thing is that it is an emotional communication. You are trying to elicit emotion, right? And we have our rational brain, right? And we have our emotional brain, system 1 and system 2, right? As Kahneman and Tversky and all those guys kind of talk about. And the fact is that we know that the majority of our decision making is done with the emotional part of our brain, right? And the rational part exists to kind of put logic and reason behind it afterwards. So ultimately what you're trying to do when you're communicating, you're trying to create an emotional connection through identification, right? So this is a product for someone like me, right? Or through, oh yes, I need that. That's going to solve a problem. So there's a kind of relief, right? A classic kind of case of this is the iPod, right? Which is a very simple kind of, in the most simplest statement of what they were trying to communicate was 1,000 songs in your pocket, right?
Yeah.
Now, the way they communicated that, if you go back to the original iTunes campaign, was this just beautiful vision of figures dancing and being in love with music, right? At a point that you could just enjoy that music kind of personally, and that endless variety of it. Now, they did it in a really kind of cool way. and they made the white earbuds, right, really iconic in the process of doing that. But that was the way they emotionally kind of connected that. If you think back to some of the best, car advertising that you could think about, and I always tend to go back to the Volkswagen work of the late 90s that was done by Arnold. It was trying to target, younger kind of post-college folks, and just it wasn't focused on a product feature. It was focused on a sense of identifying who those people were and where they were in their life. So it worked in a very kind of different way, right? There's also a way of doing it where it's just about entertainment, particularly when you don't necessarily have a particularly meaningful message, or the message hasn't changed. Geico is the classic example of that, right? Their message is incredibly simple. Yeah. 15 minutes could save you 15% on car insurance, and it hasn't changed. But they do it in a way where they're entertaining people, where it's fun. Bud Light, beer brands, Super Bowl commercials, they work in the same kind of way, right? And it's okay to just entertain people, to be memorable, to create salience that, so that when you walk into the store, you can kind of do that. So there's not, coming back to your original question, there's not one way to do it. You have to understand who your audience is. You have to understand what's going to work onto them. In the best ways, you are merging an insight about the product, an insight about the brand, and an insight about culture to create a springboard for storytelling. And there is a need to rely on some, this is where you work with creative people, art directors and copywriters, and where you need that kind of that creative spark to be able to tell that story in an amazing kind of way. Sometimes you also need, it's not just that, but, the more you can introduce iconic things into the product, white earbuds as an example,
right?
Introduce viral aspects into the product that help it spread, right? So Gmail was originally an invitation-only product. So scarcity, scarcity works very well as something where people start liking it.
And it worked very well.
Now, right? Haagen-Dazs was exactly the same. Haagen-Dazs, when they went to market, they wanted to be a super premium brand. They had their own fridges in stores, and you couldn't, because they couldn't get those fridges in everywhere, you couldn't get Haagen-Dazs everywhere. So suddenly there was a scarcity aspect to the product. So that is a way you can make these techniques work as well. So there's some of it is, communication is a part of it, but then there's also the more you can build communication and aspects and things like this into the product and distribution, the stronger your marketing effort will be as well.
Right. So how do you know if you're successful coming out of that? Because my understanding of there's another part of marketing where what you're looking for is advertising arbitrages. Basically, you're looking for spending the least amount of money to get access to the most amount of people. So when social media became a thing, it was huge because you could spend 5 cents on Google or Facebook or Instagram and get access to however many people, and that drove lots and lots of business growth for people. So how do you know if what you're doing is successful compared to perhaps another option or another route you could go down?
Well, I think to take a step back, you have to think about your objectives and then break them down into sub-objectives. So I think for me, something that we've gone away from a lot is because there's been such a huge focus on sales growth, particularly with DTC brands, they've stopped actually building a brand. A brand is the collection of impressions, thoughts, emotions that we have that surround a product or a company, right? Now, we can, and you could probably think, right, like there are a number of products that, like Tide, where you actually have a set of emotions and impressions around it. And there are some products, like this microphone maybe, but you don't, because they've not bothered to build a brand. Over the longer term, and this is research has been shown this, The more you can build a brand, the more you can build an emotional connection to your consumer, the more you can actually get a better ROI on your marketing, right? The more you can have higher loyalty, the more you're actually building a financial gain for your company, because that brand value is an intangible that sits in your balance sheet. It's the right to charge more, right, for your product, because you are seen as a better brand. Even if, by the way, you're a less expensive brand, you can still be a better brand. Geico is a better brand, even though
Right.
it's playing a price game in insurance. So then you can have brand goals and you can have sales goals, right? You can't get away from those, right? But you have to balance the spending between the two, right? What is a brand foundational layer? What is sales promotional, like to get people to buy now, to pull the trigger, all right? What is the part of my spending that's going to provoke curiosity to get me to go investigate? And what is the offer that I'm going to take to try it now, okay? And there's great research by two guys, Les Binet and Peter Fields, based in the UK, where they basically found that your proportion of brand to sales spending should be about 60-40, okay? Now,
60%.
60% brand,
40%.
40% sales, right? Performance marketing.
Interesting.
Now, then you need to break down things and say, okay, well, against those two different kinds of communication, how do I measure success? For brand, am I measuring awareness? Am I measuring consideration? Am I measuring willingness to recommend, right? And you can look at what is the most effective media to reach my consumer that will achieve that. So what is the effectiveness of social media versus paid social versus organic social versus YouTube, right? And I measure the effectiveness of each challenge in order to accomplish that. Versus, say, my sales goals, right? Where I am, for example, using retargeting pools, or I'm using social media, and I've got an acquisition goal. And then you are looking across channels to look at key metrics such as cost per acquisition, right? Cost, conversion per channel, even cost per click. Although ultimately, right, you probably don't want to look at clicks. You want to look at conversion. You want to optimize for conversion, right, whatever that is. So you have to start with the macro and then break down into micro, right, across each kind of channel.
Right. As you mentioned, I think at some point, the work you're doing on your branding eventually has to become a part of your sale. Like, at what point does the work you're doing on your branding, that 60% that you're theoretically spending per year on your branding, start to have ROI and be one of the main drivers of why you can either charge more or just be a more successful company than your competitor?
Yeah, I think it kind of is a circular. I mean, there's no one answer to that question. So first of all, ultimately, all of your communication has to work in sync. So what you're doing with your brand has to work on the sales front as well, right? Whether it's retargeting social, using social display to retarget your consumer you showed a brand ad to get them to buy now, right? Ultimately, it's got to look and feel the same way. The message emphasis is different, right? But ultimately, the more you are able to build an impression, right, the more you generate a sense like, there are various key measures one is like a brand I would recommend to friends, a brand that I see around a lot and doing a lot, the more that there's a sense of momentum behind you, right? And a sense of salience behind your brand, that's when you start seeing things picking up like, oh, I see that around a lot. I see a lot of people using it. I should try it. That's when you do that. Now, nothing kills a bad product faster than good advertising and marketing, right? So it also depends on the product experience, right? Because that's just as much part of your brand, and your ability to then deal with customers, particularly if there's a service element, deal with customer complaints, deal with, generate customer loyalty. Although customer loyalty is a myth, to be quite honest with you, because for almost all products, we buy a selection of products, right? And we're not particularly loyal to one of them. We have 4 or 5 products in repertoire, right? So you just need to make sure you're getting your relative fair share, and you're actually getting more people who haven't tried your product to try it. So the more you can do that, the more you can get that sense of momentum, the more you can look after your customer and have a great product experience, that you're going to see that ROI.
I think that's why I love marketing so much. There's never an end to it.
No, they're exactly right. And I think actually, like, you can never rest on your laurels, because you have to be interesting all the time. You have to be something that someone sees you doing something that's relevant and interesting in you and gives you something to talk and think about, right? Otherwise, you just kind of fade into the background and you're lost.
Yep.
Right? Now, it can be consistent, right? Like Nike is very consistent with what they do, but they're still always kind of reinventing things, right? Red Bull is very consistent with what they do, but they're always coming up with new ideas of what to do.
One thing that I did want to talk about, and I'd love to get your input on this, is ethics in marketing. So one thing that I typically think about is like the way that things are being marketed, but then also the products that are being marketed. So I'd love your input on just ethics in general, and then we can dive a little deeper into certain areas if we want to.
I mean, that's a very broad question, because there's lots of different like areas that we could attack. Like, so there's the ethics of marketing certain products to certain audiences, right? So the ethics of payday loans, right, to poorer people, the ethics of marketing, alcohol, nicotine to young adults, the ethics of data usage, right? I think that it comes down to individual and personal choices, right, and personal ethics. And I think that if you are not, you have to really look at yourself at the end of the day. You have to say, is there is this product harming the audience? Is it not good for them? Am I being totally honest and transparent, right? Or am I actually filling a need? And the fact is, like, there are some industries where it's definitely questionable, right? Should Juul have been marketing? Now, you also have to balance that, by the way, with a fundamental belief in human intelligence and the right to self-determination. So
well, the other thing is like how much responsibility falls in the company and how much responsibility ends up falling on the end consumer. Like, I think there's a big difference between a company, well, we can use Juul as an example, saying this is perfectly healthy for you, this is going to be everything you need, it's just like having a sucker, and them saying this is an alternative to smoking cigarettes. And it's used for people that are trying to quit cigarettes.
I think
it's a big difference.
There's a big difference, right? And I think that, like, the vaping industry was trying to say that vaping was safer than smoking, right? Which is fundamentally wrong.
I could get behind that. Yeah, I'd agree. I would agree.
It's fundamentally missing for me, which is ethically incorrect, right? I also think there's a bigger moral question of, if you are marketing a smoking product, firstly, should you be? Second of all, but if you are going to, you better make sure you're disclosing everything, right? Just like pharmaceutical companies have to disclose all of the side effects, right? And all of the trials and all of those things, right, that they're doing. So I think that, when you try and position a product as cool or tasty or flavorful without giving the full story, that's kind of very dodgy, as we say in England, right? Now we come on to data, that's a whole other different question, right? Because I fundamentally think that there's been a trade-off for years, okay, in terms of data usage. People have always, like, supermarkets have always collected data about what people are buying. Nielsen has always collected data, admittedly through surveys and panels, on what people are watching, right? There has been a quid pro quo about, I watch TV, right, on the networks, and I don't pay for it if I don't want to, right? Because and in exchange, I'm sold advertising. And when the internet started, it was exactly the same thing. I don't pay for content, and in return, I watch advertising. And your data is going to be part of what's bought and sold. Now, maybe there needs to be better education among people to understand that. But that's the fundamental trade-off. And if you want to give up that trade-off, that's fine. Use services where there is a paywall and where you don't get served advertising, right? Like the New York Times or the Washington Post or Business Insider. And that's the model that a lot of companies have gone to, in part because there's too much advertising, there's too much ad space available, so you can't charge for it. That's totally fine. But I think that it's something that we've always done, and we've just gotten a little better at it, right? We've gotten better at piecing together different bits of data and then serving you ads based on what you've kind of done.
Yeah, so, and I think we're also just able to collect more of it way faster too.
Exactly. So it's not different. It's just more precise than what we've already done. Now, that doesn't mean that system can't be abused, right? The way that it's being abused from an election manipulation perspective. And that's definitely troubling. That doesn't mean that it can't be abused from the point of view of, like, say, your phone or Google Home or Alexa listening to conversations they should not be listening to, right? And I think some of the things they've done in Europe in terms of warning about cookies, right, promotes consumer awareness of this. So yeah, or giving consumers the option to opt out of having their data being collected is a good thing. But recognize there's a trade-off. If you don't want your data to be collected, then maybe you need to be expected to pay for the service.
Yeah, I'm personally a guy. I love my data being collected because it makes my life just that much easier. So, for one example, I use Google Chrome, and literally all of the files. I also use Google Drive. So all of the files that I ever use, if I type in one keyword, it pulls up. Like I put that in the search or the browser bar or whatever you want to call it, and it pulls it up because it knows that's where I've been in the past. So that's one example. Like them using my data is super helpful for me. And the other thing, I don't purchase a lot of things, but when I see advertisements that are aligned with like what I want to buy, that's kind of helpful. Right. You know, if I'm going to buy a fishing pole anyways, if they're going to make a recommendation of a fishing pole to buy based off of X, Y, and Z, that's my dog, by the way. I don't know if you saw.
I saw it. I was like, your dog's
yeah, it's her birthday today, actually. She turned 2 years old.
How old is she?
She's 2. She's a little meatball, but she's an English. Oh, she wants to talk in the microphone. She's an English red lab.
Super sweet.
I'll be with you in just a second, okay? she's my co-pilot every day. I'm up in the cabin right now. It's just me and her, and she's pushing me really hard to go outside. 5 more minutes, Rosie. Okay. But yeah, I enjoy my data getting collected, but I'm also like fully aware of the things that it gets used for. I'm sure people are paying a lot of money to use the data, or at least leverage that data to market to me. One thing that might be interesting, I don't know if you can pull this off, but if you stayed with the same model that Google uses, where there's no paywall, Instagram, all the social media platforms, there's no paywall. Is there a way for the user to get a cut of the money that is spent on them to advertise to them?
Well, that's a product idea I've had for some time, actually, that I keep meaning to work on. But I think that's a really interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I don't know how it would work, but it's kind of an interesting theory to see if it would work.
Yeah.
Well, geez, my dog's getting all over me here now, Mike. I should probably. I got one more question for her, then I got to bring her outside and go all around a little bit.
No worries.
I ask it to everybody at the end of the show. What is one marketing strategy, platform, or idea that is either unknown or underutilized that's highly effective?
Wow, that's a tough question. I think that I don't think there's a platform or a strategy that's necessarily unknown or underutilized, but I do think that a lot of companies aren't, I think, spending enough time kind of doing marketing strategy in the right way of putting the consumer at the center still, right? They're leading with the product, or they're leading with technology, and they're not leading, enough with the user potentially. That I think, can happen. And I think that I see, even though it's very basic, I still see it kind of way too often. I think in terms of like,
interesting.
some strategies, I think people have gone away from it a little bit, but like, I love like guerrilla marketing strategies, whether it's stickers or whether
Me
it's
too.
kind of wild
Yes.
postings.
Yes.
And I worked at Kirschenbaum Bond and Partners with John Bond and Richard Kirschenbaum, who were like the OGs of guerrilla marketing. And the stuff they did was like putting stickers on mangoes when they launched Mango Snapple, things like that were just genius. And there was some great thinkers in that, in that world. So I just think it's very, where the media is the message. That's just always just interesting strategy to do. It's not easy, but I think that the more that we're online, stuff that's in the real world, I think becomes more impactful. And actually, this makes me think of something. I'm gonna categorize this up. I think that literally direct mail packages to people's houses is actually a very effective thing, because no one gets mail anymore.
Yes.
So like,
yes. Nobody. It's thinking the same thing. I get probably 100 plus emails a day, and I'm sure you do too. You probably get even way more than that. But when I was thinking about it, how many pieces of mail do I get? And this, people may have gotten way more in the past, but I probably, I'm only 20, so I probably get one piece of mail every few days. And my family gets a few pieces every day. But if you get a package, that's a big deal. Like that doesn't happen often.
Yeah, exactly. So like, if you send a package to a business person's desk, and particularly if you send it by FedEx, right?
Yeah.
Or UPS, so there's someone signs for it, it's going to get on their desk.
Yeah.
It's going to cause them to open something. So I think that sort of three things that are in real life, things that are 3D dimensional, I definitely see that as important.
Cool. Well, I'm right there with you, Mark. Those are three very good points that you made right there. I'm going to take Rosie outside, go celebrate her birthday a little bit.
Go celebrate her birthday. Hi, Rosie.
All right, Mark. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you joining me.
Let me know when you put this out, okay? And send me a link to it.
I will.
Awesome.
I will. Alrighty.
Thanks a lot, Jake.
Take care.
Cheers, bye-bye.